Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Although the terrorist threat in Great Britain has been lowered, the threat in Northern Ireland remains severe, meaning an attack's highly likely. The threat comes from various dissident Republican groups, of which the so-called New IRA is the most prominent and dangerous. It was responsible for the shooting of the young journalist Lyra McKee during a riot in Derry just over 6 months ago. Lyra McKee was a powerful voice of her generation, railing against those who would disturb Northern Ireland's hard-won peace. Here's Peter Taylor.
Derry, or Londonderry, has suffered grievously during the 50 years of the conflict, but it's now become famous for happier reasons. A Channel 4 series called Derry Girls. I've been talking to the real Derry Girls.
I was born in the Bogside in 1981, just right at the Free Derry corner. My daddy was in prison when I was a wee girl. He'd been involved in the IRA. So my first meeting with my daddy would have been in Long Kesh visitor room.
I was born in Derry in 1980. My family experienced the troubles with my father being present on Bloody Sunday and his cousin being murdered on Bloody Sunday. This is the youth club. I know all the size of it. And we had all gathered in here and we were watching, I think it was the first episode of Derry Girls.
This photo means a huge amount to the group because one of those watching is Lyra McKee, murdered in April this year by the dissident group, the New IRA.
She fitted in so well in terms of who we were as people and the group dynamic. I really fangirled her, I absolutely did. I just thought she was brilliant. The things that she wrote were so pertinent.
One of the things she wrote was, "We were the Good Friday Agreement generation, destined to never witness the horrors of war, but to reap the spoils of peace. The spoils just never seemed to reach us."
And that article, it just spoke to me so much before I'd even met her. We haven't seen, especially in the Northwest, we haven't seen the spoils of peace.
In Derry, violence has clouded the fragile peace. The Cregan Estate, one of the most deprived areas in the United Kingdom, has become the stronghold of the New IRA and its alleged political wing, Saru. Paddy Gallagher is part of Saru's leadership in Derry.
And this is a Saru poster, or a poster that Saru has put up.
It is, yeah. It's highlighting the message that states disband or rebranded RUC, which is basically a PSNI in a different guise. A lot of people in this area, and indeed all Republican areas across Derry and the occupied 6 counties, are opposed to British Crown forces.
The police.
They don't trust them. They don't see the need for them.
Just over 6 months ago, police searched a house on that same Cregan estate for explosives. None was found. A riot broke out. Lyra was standing by a police Land Rover covering the scene as a journalist. A gunman opened fire at the police, but the bullet hit Lyra.
I was there, I was with Lyra. I saw her falling and land on the ground, and I didn't believe, even right up until arriving at the hospital, that she'd been shot. I could not believe that's what happened in Cregan.
Saru's Paddy Gallagher was also around during the riot.
A number of people in the area come out and resisted British Crown forces, for want of a better word, and
Started firing at them.
sadly that resulted in the tragic death of Lyra McKee.
And the gunman was where?
From footage that I've seen, it appears the gunman was around this area.
Did you know who the gunman was?
Nope.
Are you surprised that nobody has been charged with the murder of Lyra McKee?
Not really, no.
Why not?
Well, people have called for members of this community to inform, but the people of this community know the life of an informer. I think, judging by history, they know exactly what would happen to informers.
If they give information.
Yeah.
4 days after her murder, Lyra's friends expressed their outrage on the walls of Saru's office.
Nobody wants you.
It was Kathleen's
It was
idea.
Kathleen's idea, and she said that's the symbolism of the blood in their hands for what they've done. And we all agreed. We said, yep, that's absolutely fantastic idea.
I had to express for myself, for the whole city, to say to them, my friend has been murdered and these people have blood on their hands.
I remember thinking to myself, nothing matters. They've murdered our friend, and that was the emotion that day. I've never felt like that before, where fear's gone. I wasn't afraid. I remember distinctly saying that. I am not afraid, let's go. And even though they were standing outside with their arms crossed, staring at us.
Lyra's nearest and dearest.
The world watched as Father Martin McGill paid tribute at Lyra's funeral in Belfast Cathedral. The congregation included a roll call of political leaders from Westminster, Belfast and Dublin.
Why, in God's name, does it take the death of a 29-year-old woman with her whole life in front of her?
It was an unforgettable moment. The political leaders seemed embarrassed and didn't know what to do. It was as if Father Martin's words had shamed them. For a fleeting moment, it seemed there was hope of a political breakthrough. But alas, it was not to be. Lyra's murder drew the world's attention to the new wave of violence that has taken root in Northern Ireland's political vacuum.
I've been in post 4 months and I've dealt with more incidents than my predecessor did throughout his tenure, so that's a worry for us.
The new IRA's car bomb outside Derry's courthouse earlier this year, in which no one was killed or injured, is the most dramatic of the group's recent attacks. But there have also been several unsuccessful attempts to kill police officers.
What is the threat from the so-called new IRA?
Their sophistication is increasing. They have access to firearms and to explosives and to the sort of engineering that means they can make viable and dangerous devices. And there's a tempo which has changed. The thing we're keeping an eye on is the way they will exploit young people to effectively recruit and generate the next generation of terrorists.
Dissident supporters of Seru maintain that they and the new IRA are the true heirs of militant republicanism, commemorating the hunger strikers who have died down the years as martyrs for the cause. Dee Fennell is a member of Seru's national executive and runs its office in Belfast. He insists that Seru is a purely political organisation and has no connection whatsoever with the new IRA. It's illegal to express support for a proscribed organisation.
Do you support the so-called new IRA?
Well, you couldn't say that either.
Well, you can.
Well, you can, but you would be liable to prosecution. You have to be very careful in how you answer. What I would say is that Republicans traditionally have accepted that while there is an occupation of Ireland, while partition remains, there will always be someone or some organisation who will engage in armed resistance against it.
You've said, and I quote, Seru will never view armed resistance as illegitimate, and Seru is unapologetic about this. Isn't that expressing support for the so-called armed struggle?
Well, no, I don't think it does.
That's the clear implication of that statement that you made.
There's a fluidity that not every member of Seru, as we'd see it, would be a member of the new IRA, and similarly not every member of the new IRA may be a member of Seru, but there is an overlap.
There's interchangeability between your leadership and the leadership of the so-called new IRA.
Well, I know who's in the leadership of Seru.
And are they also in the leadership of the new IRA?
I don't know who's in the leadership of the IRA.
Oh, come on.
I don't know any IRA members. The IRA is a secret army, Peter. So people who are in it, it's a secret.
On the Cregan estate, which I've got to know over many decades, it's a battle as ever for hearts and minds. A battle between the police, desperate for community support, and the new IRA, determined to keep the community in its grip, through intimidation and by brutally dealing with residents' concerns over drug dealers and antisocial behaviour.
We actively police parts of Derry, Londonderry, where they've got a strong base. Whilst it's probably fair to say they They drew some energy, frankly, from the tragic killing of Lyra McKee, which I know has been widely reported, that the sentiment in the community in which they're based is one where they don't want them there, and that they're seen as people that ruin people's lives, they exploit vulnerable young people.
What effect did the murder of Lyra McKee have on Ciru and its support base?
Honestly, I think it had a minimal impact on our support base.
But isn't that remarkable, given the horror, the universal horror that the murder had?
Well, I think there's a realisation within the Republican community that Ciru were not involved in killing Lyra McKee. The IRA killed Lyra McKee. The IRA took responsibility and apologies for killing Lyra McKee, which I publicly asked them to do.
Breaking the wall of silence in the Cregan surrounding Lyra's murder is the fearsome challenge the police face.
There's an undertone of threats and intimidation that you can understand even if you were the person overlooking where that gunman was standing and pulling the trigger, how frightened you would be about putting your name to a statement and giving evidence in court.
The police say that some of the community have broken their silence, but as yet no one has been charged with Lyra's murder. Do you know who killed Lyra McKee?
I think there's a groundswell of intelligence that will point us towards certain people.
Are you confident that the person who shot Lyra McKee will be charged and prosecuted?
I remain optimistic.
6 months on, the real Derry girls continue to defy the dissidents, spraying a tribute to Lyra on the Free Derry wall. Hope drives them on. Hope not only that her killer will finally be brought to justice, but that peace and the spoils of it that Lyra referred to will finally prevail in Derry and in Northern Ireland.
Peter Taylor with that film.